For our panel on solving the plastic puzzle, our esteemed panelists are Ranveer Tanwar, known as the Pond Man of India. Ranveer Tanwar quit his job to resurrect the dying wetlands for a sustainable future. His organization, Say Earth, has restored over 85 water bodies across 6 states in India. Vimlendu Jha, founder and executive director of Swecha. Vimlendu Jha drives youth-led sustainability efforts, climate education, waste management and ecological restoration. Bharti Chaturvedi, founder and director of Chintan. Bharti Chaturvedi has dedicated her career to promoting sustainability while addressing the intersection of environmental issues and marginalized communities.
All right, so we've set the stage for what lies ahead, and we're actually dealing with a very challenging question, which comes to solving the plastic puzzle. Now, plastic pollution, these two terms obviously have far-reaching implications. These two words pose a global challenge. We're talking about 430 million tons of plastic, 2/3 of which actually ends up polluting our aquatic ecosystems. We will get to the bottom of the crisis we're dealing with, but also we will try and arrive at some solutions, because this is a horror story that's playing on loop day in and day out, and there is no option but to have a positive ending to that story for our future generations and for our planet. There is no planet B, there is only planet A. This is the world we are dealing with right now. And let's just begin by talking about the very question that comes up. Over the years, we're talking about since the 1900s, since the time plastic ever came into posing such a challenge or existing in the form that we know of it today, which of course has changed over time. But if we know the answer to the problem, then why is it so difficult to actually get there? And I want to ask each one of you to actually comment on that, starting with you, Bharti. Of course, your organization has also been very, very closely involved when it comes to dealing with waste management and the issues on the ground. So over the years, you know, when we've been having those conversations, we have spoken also extensively about why the gap in terms of the solutions and the problem to be dealt with.
So firstly, there is only one solution, and that is to drastically reduce plastic. And there is really no other solution. I mean, recycling is not a solution. Recycling is a delaying tactic, because you can recycle plastic, but the fact is, firstly, plastic can only be recycled a certain number of times, between 3 and 5 at best. Secondly, you lose a lot of the material while recycling, and in any case, you have leakages into the ecosystem even while recycling. In fact, the fleece vests that we all wear in the winter, a lot of that is recycled PET, but when you wash it, you have those little microfibers of plastic which actually go out into the air as well as the nala and finally the rivers. So there's no doubt that recycling is a delaying tactic. You have to reduce. But the point is that we're not seeing enough investment in any form of reduction. I mean, even all of this is plastic, right? It's PVC largely, all these placards and all of yours. So they're not going to be recycled. They're just going to emit phthalates, which is a very, very toxic chemical, which disrupts the endocrine system and so on, harms children and newborn babies. But you can't recycle these. So we firstly have materials that cannot be recycled, and then we have recycling of materials, which is a temporary solution. So until you have money invested in making alternatives, which don't have to be material alternatives, we could come up with ideas around reuse and service provision instead of constantly buying and all of that. We are not going to reduce plastics. I mean, the current model of collection and recycling And upcycling won't help. I mean, there's a point, there's a logic there, but it's not a solution.
Right, and we will come to what we as individuals can do in our capacity, maybe starting tomorrow, if not today itself, that will go a long way. But I want to come to you, Vimlendu, to just talk about what Bharti just mentioned, you know. Speaking of microfibers, like she said, on the cloth that we wear, microplastics, you know, there's no running away from them. They've now made their way into our bodies, in our brain, and our heart. In fact, one estimate, which is scary in itself, says that we ingest equivalent to a credit card of plastic per week. That's the amount of plastic we're dealing with, not outside, but inside our bodies. I want to just take your comments first on the challenge that we are dealing with in the first place.
Okay, so first of all, we need to understand, you know, a lot of times we talk about safe plastic or plastic as an issue, plastic as a problem, plastic as a challenge. The safest plastic on this planet is the plastic that is not even manufactured. So the biggest problem that we need to address, and I'm sure the minister will be here, of course he's doing road, but in the sense largely if you look at the amount of money or the production industry of plastic is so huge that, you know, all of us are actually counting several million tons of plastic waste, and out of that 40% not being even collected, 30% really being recycled, so on and so forth. These numbers are of very little consequence unless and until we don't really stop the production. Again, as a romantic, as an environmentalist, am I here to say that, oh, well, plastic is bad? No. I'm not saying that we should actually be 100% plastic free. But can we be plastic responsible? And that is where the challenge is, that as we have done two things. At an individual level, we've actually prioritized convenience, individual convenience, so that you don't need to carry a cloth bag or, for that matter, you know, wash that cloth bag. And therefore, everything has become plastic, even our smile and our emotions. Therefore, so plastics is not, and our responsibility towards many of those things. We'll come to that in some time. But also at an institutional level, it serves the purpose to keep plastic linear, or plastic economy to be linear, because, you know what, I just had a bottle of, you know, there's plastic bottles outside everywhere, and, you know, whoever sold that plastic bottle to us is not going to take it back. Of course, on paper, there's something called extended producer's responsibility, which is basically if you made 10 rupees or 5 rupees on that plastic bottle from me, and of course, you've sold whatever, as in you made 80% profit or 60% profit, it's also your responsibility to take it back. Unless and until it doesn't pinch the producer and cause them inconvenience, selling us convenience in short term and catastrophe in the long term is the problem. So, you know, in short, of course, I gave you a long answer, and we'll talk about microplastic. If the entire country's reality or the world's reality is that you all are chewing credit cards, and we all know it, and I'm sure most of the people, at least 80% people in this audience will be graduates and understand what does chewing credit card means. I'm sure you are not going to take out a credit card from your pocket and chew it, but someone is making you chew that. What's your reaction? What's your action? How are we all normalizing it? And drawing analogy from this last point is, of course, we are very close to where the parliament is, and where, you know, the air of Taj Mahal Hotel is very, very different from the air of not the Taj Mahal Hotel, 5 kilometers outskirts. RK Puram, the AQI would be 380. I'm sure AQI here would be 330. I don't see a single mask in this room, no one wearing a mask. I'm not even sure if anybody has that in their pocket. That's the problem where we normalize. Jitna bhi acha hoga, the AQI would be not better than 300 in this room as well. But 300? It's okay, it's not 400, it's just a number. So chewing credit card is not just a number, 380 AQI is not just a number, someone forcing you to chew that credit card is a crime, someone letting you to breathe this bad air is a crime.
Yes, and like you said at the outset, being a romantic versus being realistic, and it's actually about bridging that gap. And we will come to the many aspects that you just highlighted, including what we can do to demand better from brands and organizations, right? But I want to also get in Ramveer ji on this. You're known as the pond man of India, restoring multiple ponds, 80 plus and counting. अगर हम ecosystem की बात करें, marine life पे जो impact होता है, जो हमने images भी देखी हैं, plastic objects strangulating our marine life, very haunting images, जो आपको obviously sit up and take notice के लिए force करती हैं. लेकिन आप क्या राय देना चाहेंगे लोगों को जो शायद इस crisis को अभी पूरी तरह समझ नहीं पाए हैं?
बिल्कुल, देखिए, चाहे वो मरीन लाइफ की बात हो, ऑल्दो आई एम वर्किंग फॉर पॉन्ड्स, नॉट एट बिग लेवल ऑफ सी, सो बट मरीन लाइफ की पिक्चर्स मार्केट में इसलिए आ जाती हैं क्योंकि वहाँ तक मीडिया की या जो सोशल इन्फ्लुएंसर्स की है उनकी रीच होती है. बट हर गली के पास या हर मोहल्ले में, हर गांव, हर शहर में 10-10, 15-15 पॉन्ड्स हैं जिनको मिलाकर शायद एक समुंदर बन जाए. लेकिन वो सारे पॉन्ड्स, लेकिन वो सारे पॉन्ड्स भी किसी लैंडफिल साइट से ज़्यादा अच्छी शेप में नहीं है ना. इवन आप दिल्ली में भी देखेंगे तो मोर देन थाउजेंड्स वाटर बॉडीज़ हुआ करते थे, बट अगर आप गुड शेप में अगर किसी पॉन्ड को गिनेंगे आज भी तो 100-200 से ज़्यादा अच्छे पॉन्ड्स नहीं निकलेंगे. और सब में पहले वो धीरे धीरे डंप किया गया गार्बेज, फिर उसके ऊपर मिट्टी डाल के उसको ढक दिया गया. दे हैव बीन लाइक डंप्ड, है ना. सो और हम जब पॉन्ड को क्लीन करते हैं सो मैक्सिमम अमाउंट उसमें प्लास्टिक की ही निकलती है, प्लास्टिक एंड सिलज. और प्लास्टिक में भी जो सिंगल यूज प्लास्टिक है, जो स्पेशली नॉट बॉटल्स, है ना, बॉटल्स के अलावा जो चिप्स के पैकेट हैं, जो कुरकुरे के पैकेट्स हैं, जो शैम्पू के पैकेट्स हैं, जो जिसको हम थैली कहते हैं, सो वो पन्नी जिसको हम कहते हैं, वो सारे पैकेट्स हैं. बट आई थिंक जब हम सस्टेनेबिलिटी की बात करते हैं, सबसे पहले तो मैं वियान को थैंक यू बोलता हूँ कि वो आई थिंक कि अभी तक सस्टेनेबिलिटी की बात कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि मैंने बहुत सारे संस्थाओं को देखा है कि वो पिछले 2-3 साल पहले तक बहुत सस्टेनेबिलिटी की बात कर रहे थे, लेकिन जैसे ही दुनिया के कुछ जो पावरफुल लोग हैं, रिचेस्ट लोग हैं, उन्होंने कहा सस्टेनेबिलिटी सब बेकार की बात है, वो अचानक से चुप हो गए. सो स्टिल अगर आप इस तरह की सस्टेनेबिलिटी पे रुके हुए हैं तो यही अपने आप में बड़ी बात है. और इसी तरह सबसे पहले ज़रूरत है कि हमें इस बारे में बात करनी है. ऑल्दो हम बात तो जैसा आपने कहा 90s से करते आ रहे हैं, बट वो बात भी कर रहे हैं और धीरे धीरे उसको ख़राब भी करते जा रहे हैं. वो दोनों पैरेलल में चल रहे हैं. जितने ज़्यादा इवेंट्स हो रहे हैं, जितनी ज़्यादा बातें हो रही हैं, कंडीशन उतनी ज़्यादा ख़राब हो रही है. बट मेरी नज़र में क्या है कि एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी तभी हासिल हो सकती है जब उसको सोशल सस्टेनेबिलिटी और इकोनॉमिकल सस्टेनेबिलिटी के साथ लिंक किया जाए. अभी मैं देखता हूँ घर के बाहर सुबह सुबह रैक पिकर्स आते हैं, है ना, और वो जो प्लास्टिक की बॉटल्स होते हैं, कांच होते हैं, उनको सब लेके जाते हैं. एक भी नहीं मिलेगा पूरी गली में, लेकिन वो पाउच को छोड़ जाते हैं, वो पन्नी को छोड़ जाते हैं, वो छोटे छोटे रैपर्स को छोड़ जाते हैं. क्यों छोड़ जाते हैं? क्योंकि उसमें उनकी इकोनॉमिकल सस्टेनेबिलिटी नहीं है. अगर उसकी कॉस्ट भी उनको अच्छी मिल जाए मार्केट में तो एक भी पाउच नहीं छोड़े वो. जैसे बोतल्स को नहीं छोड़ते, वो इवन दीवार को कूद के लेके जाते हैं वो कांच की बोतल, तो है ना, क्योंकि उसमें उनकी इकोनॉमिकल सस्टेनेबिलिटी है. दूसरा सोशल सस्टेनेबिलिटी. अगर मैं प्लास्टिक की बोतल यूज कर रहा हूँ और एक मैं जिस तरह से आप यहाँ पे रखे हैं कांच की बोतल या आजकल वो मिट्टी की बोतल, बैम्बू की बोतल आती है, तो मेरी अगर समाज मुझे बैम्बू की बोतल या मिट्टी वाली जो बोतल है उससे मुझे ज़्यादा अच्छी नज़र से देखेगा उसकी बजाय कि जो प्लास्टिक की बोतल यूज करता है, तो मैं अपना आप ही मेरा समाज में कद बढ़ेगा और मैं उसको ज़्यादा यूज करना चाहूँगा. अब हम क्या है, हम जैसे लोग पूरी साल पूरे महीने चिल्लाते हैं कि नो प्लास्टिक, नो प्लास्टिक, नो रैपर, नो येपर. फिर एक दिन अचानक से कोई बड़ी सेलिब्रिटी आता है टीवी पे, कहता है दाने दाने में केसर का स्वाद, तो हमारी बात मानेंगे कि उनकी बात मानेंगे, है ना. तो उनकी ज़्यादा बात है. इसलिए सोशल सस्टेनेबिलिटी ज़्यादा होनी चाहिए कि हम ऐसे लोगों को क्रिटिसाइज़ करें या ऐसे लोगों को कम, जब उनको लगेगा कि हाँ यार हमको कम इज्जत से देखा जा रहा है बाकायदा उनके कि जो नहीं यूज कर रहे हैं, तो अपने आप ही लोग यूज करना बंद कर देंगे.
जैसा कि आपने कहा that sustainability is something that we take very seriously, and here at WION, in fact, like we also mentioned at the outset, we do a daily show which talks about the issue of climate crisis called Climate Tracker. I also want to get in Bharti on the aspect that we touched upon briefly earlier. what can individuals do at their level when it comes to segregation of waste? There's so much that's been talked about. But if there is a starting point, if there is one step that those who are watching, those in this room can actually take starting tomorrow at their own level to do their bit, because we said, there is a long journey ahead, but we can take those small steps in our own capacity as well.
So I think firstly that we should realize, we'll say what we should do, but we should first of all realize कि अपने घर में या अपने ऑफिस में जो भी कर रहे हैं, it's less than a बूंद. Because वो ज़माना चला गया. अभी we have a climate emergency. We have a huge amount of waste, and there is just doing something at home doesn't shift the needle. Because हमारी जो policies हैं, जो हमारी अलग-अलग type की policies हैं, वो they are not in place, they're not being enforced. हमारा objective क्या है कि प्लास्टिक को कम करें, और जो unavoidable है, जैसे कि कई चीज़ों में unavoidable है, how do we handle that the best? लेकिन we are not being able to. So although I feel that citizens should do two things. एक तो अपना segregate करो, compost करो. There are hundreds of alternatives to plastics, and make a system. Carry a unfashionable bag, उसमें अपनी चीज़ें ले जाओ. But the other thing is कि लड़ो, भाई protest करो, आप सड़क पे आओ, आप रणबीर कपूर, I'm sorry, am I not supposed to take names? Anyway, जो भी celebrity हो, जैसे आपने बोला था, I mean, troll them, yeah, on social media. Make your friends. I mean, why is it that only environmentalists have to be trolled? कि हमने बोल दिया कि this is bad, people are fighting with us. भाई, public should be trolling the wrong things.
It's about
be
making
an activist. Don't sit like this.
It's about making this our own fight, and I think that's where the
But
responsibility
a big fight,
comes
not
in.
a soft, sweet little drawing room conversation fight. कि telling your cousin कि तू क्यों ले, I don't want, ये gift क्यों लाए हो आप plastic bag में? No, boss. Fight with everything.
When you're talking about the policy makers and what we can do at the global level, we've obviously had a series of setbacks, when it comes to even the UN Global Plastic Treaty conversations, for example. Earlier on, the headlines splashed the world over, said deep divisions among the member countries and all of that. So if we take this to the macro scale, like you're saying, it's deeply unfortunate, of course.
No, you don't
that
need
those
to
gaps
just take your own laws. Extended producer, like what Vimlendu said, EPR. Every piece, जो आप बोल रहे थे ना, chips packets, the chip manufacturer by law is obliged to pick up that and recycle it. लेकिन आपने क्या किया है? एक तो आप उठाते नहीं, क्योंकि आपके targets ऐसे हैं कि आप 3-4 जगह से लेके अपने targets fulfill कर लेते हैं, क्योंकि you are not interested. And secondly, recycler makes money. जो waste picker है, उसको तो फूटी कौड़ी नहीं मिलता, तो वो क्यों उठाएगा? जो जैसे आप बोल रहे थे, तो आपने extended producer responsibility को एक ऐसी चीज़ बना दी है that it has become a game of how to get credits and earn money. It has become a livelihood for a recycler or a waste to energy developer versus a way to clean up the country. तो आपने तो मजाक कर दिया है. This implementation process is a joke. So that is what, we don't even have to go global. अपने ही में ठीक कर लें, बहुत होगा.
Let's talk about the fact that, when we talk about demanding accountability from brands, is it just the economics? Is it just the fact that there are those gaps that obviously come up every now and then when we talk about what Bharti is also referring to? How can that change in the long run? Or, of course, the need of the hour is the short run, but what do you think about actually changing that?
See, a lot of times we are told or we are fed that it's a demand-supply issue, as if people are asking for plastic / cancer / credit card in their mouth, in their tummy, / whatever. And we always blame it as if, people are asking for it. What do we do? As in, it's not, people go to Sarojini Nagar or wherever, and they say, oh, well, you know what? Give me one more plastic, as if every bagan could be in each single plastic would be such a great luxury. In all of this, we forget that plastic is not a behavior problem. A lot of times, the soft peddling, what Bharti was also talking about, that a lot of times we run, and of course for 40 years, for God's sake, we've been running this campaign or longer, say no to plastic bag. We of course in 2022 banned single-use plastic. But is there that ban on single-use plastic? How, and somebody's supplying it. Of course, we know the richest man of the world is the person who is the biggest producer of plastic in the world. Richest man of India also. We don't take names at all. But it's okay if they flood our river bodies, as if Ganga is so polluted, if Yamuna is clogged, 80% of India's water bodies are terrible, 10% of Delhi's air quality is ambient air quality is because of burning of waste, and 80% of that waste is actually plastic, and plastic that not collected or not managed properly. And behind that, easy would be ban plastic, simple, and make sure that it is done. A child told me many, many years ago, by the way, this is a 20-year-old story. I'd taken some children for a Yamuna walk, and this is, so I do some bit of work on Yamuna, and there was a lot of plastic floating on the river, and they said, sir, ye itna plastic kyun hai? So then the other child replies that, isko ban kyun nahi kar dete? तो तीसरे ने बोला कि जब तक नेताओं के झंडे प्लास्टिक के बनने बंद नहीं होंगे तब तक प्लास्टिक बैन नहीं होगा, क्योंकि that's where it is. Of course, that was a 7-year-old child that we're talking about, and any graduate will know that large funding and many other things that we look at. So we can't be, if we, in one breath we call ourselves intellectual and people who know what is what, and then ignore the harsh reality and blame it and pin it on behavior when it is an institutional crisis, when that corporations, that institutions, what Bharti was talking about or what I mentioned earlier, if there is a law called extended producer's responsibility, why should it just become so customary? Why should it just be an academic process? Why should it just be a compliance formality and not about return? No toothpaste company will be allowed to operate in this country because if they don't take that post-use, post-consumption plastic back. Because they are making money, right? How are people becoming billionaires? So people are becoming billionaires, some of them, and we are becoming a sick nation. All that data that we're talking about, again, this is not agitation, this is not activism, this is application of common sense and basic degree of 10th pass understanding of health, that chewing plastic, breathing plastic is not good. So I think that's what we need. And I think in all of this, there needs to be certain, what Bharti said in terms of ground up demand, but also top down understanding that idea of a great nation or a great society has to be understanding of what is sustainable. Like last week, the Supreme Court of India coined a word called sustainable mining. As in, it's like sustainable plastic, sustainable mining, sustainable AK-47, sustainable coal. These are oxymoron terms. These are, at the end of the day, alternative to plastic is no plastic. As I said, my opening line was the safest plastic is the plastic that never came. Green pataka, and that's again, as in, so therefore we need to really work on that and ask those questions. I think, there is a lot of greenwashing. You need to understand that, glad I don't see, or maybe I do. A lot of times, a lot of great green events and conferences are funded by corporations. So, a lot of greenwashing happens, big conferences on sustainability will happen, that fundamentally it's not just about what you say, but what you do. It's not just about those big, great placards on sustainability. It's about your internal processes. And the reason why you and I are supposed to, a couple of years ago, as in we are more cow-loving than we were earlier, a cow was found with 16 kilo plastic. For that cow's sake, 16 kilo plastic in a dead cow's tummy was found in one of the landfills in that sense. And that's the story we all see everywhere on the roadside. Plastic is not just what you see on the roadside. It's visibly entering into our animals, our food chain. We eat plastic because we like it. It's very delicious. It makes a good, your tandoori roti is good when it's kept in plastic dabba. And everything else. The water tastes nice when it's in plastic because it's neat and transparent. It just gives you a good high. We need to change those understandings and ask those governance questions.
Yes, but why is it that gap exists then in terms of the habits when it comes to trickle-down effect as well?
So, because, you don't eat plastic and you fall down, right? It's not a sleeping pill. So, effect of that, the impact of that is not immediate. And that is where governance comes. At the end of the day...
Because of the urgency of the crisis, like you said.
Because you don't know... So if a doctor tells you that you are going to lose 12 years of your life, that doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow. And therefore, you don't understand what breathing 350 AQI or 500 plus AQI or
like you said, what the numbers basically tell us, and to actually realize the gravity
and that urgency. And a lot of times, what we do is that we say we are a poor country. We need to prioritize few things. And this is all linked to development paradigm and our trajectory, and therefore we just need to do it. This environmentalism is bad. It will delay the process. How can petroleum, because at the end of the day, what is plastic? Plastic is petroleum, right? Petrol product, and petroleum is petroleum. The government. So the governments of the world will have to come forward and say, if something is killing my children, if 40% of cancer cases is because of microplastic, please bloody stop it.
The challenges that you all encounter on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the on-the-ground work or even with the kind of change that we are wanting, I want to ask each one of you, starting with Ramveer ji, जो ये basic understanding का problem है कि enormity of the crisis versus the urgency and what needs to be done immediately, because it's an emergency, it's a crisis and the clock is ticking, it's a race against time. लेकिन आपके experience में क्या वो challenges रहे हैं जो ये understanding का gap है और the efforts जो आपने लिए हैं उसको बदलने के लिए?
देखिए challenges तो हैं इवन लेकिन यह है कि उसके अकॉर्डिंग टाइम के अकॉर्डिंग अगर कोई चैलेंज होता है तो टाइम के अकॉर्डिंग उसके सॉल्यूशन भी दिखाई देने लगते हैं टाइम के साथ साथ, है ना? सो
I like the optimism there.
या सो और वो है ही, जैसे हमने जब इनिशिएटिव शुरू किया था तो वी लॉट्स हैव यूज्ड टू हैव लॉट्स ऑफ चैलेंजेस, है ना? बट वो धीरे धीरे कुछ चैलेंजेस ओवरकम होने लगे. तो जब टेक्नोलॉजी डेवलप होती है तो वो दोनों वेज में काम करती है ना? सो वो टेक्नोलॉजी चैलेंजेस को कम करने के लिए भी काम करती है लेकिन पैरेलली नए चैलेंजेस भी क्रिएट करती है. सो वही प्लास्टिक पॉल्यूशन के साथ भी हुआ है. जहाँ तक हमारे एफर्ट्स की बात है, हम मल्टी लेवल पे एफर्ट्स करने की कोशिश करते हैं. सबसे पहले तो हम अपने सोशल मीडिया रीच के थ्रू कोशिश करते हैं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों तक हमारी बात पहुँचे और क्या सस्टेनेबल वेज हैं उन लोगों को हम बताएं एट द ग्रास रूट लेवल, है ना? क्योंकि जो एक टिपिकल रूरल गांव में रह रहे हैं और जो शहर में रह रहे हैं, है ना, आप गांव में जाएंगे शायद उनको सस्टेनेबिलिटी वर्ड आज तक उन्होंने जीवन में एक बार भी ना बोला हो, है ना? बट उनका कार्बन फुटप्रिंट हमसे 40 टाइम्स कम है ना? तो सिर्फ मतलब सस्टेनेबिलिटी का मतलब वो नहीं है कि जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी के बारे में जानते हैं वही ज़्यादा सस्टेनेबल है, जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी के बारे में आज तक सुना भी नहीं है वो ज़्यादा सस्टेनेबल है. तो इस टर्म्स को फैशन बनाने की बजाय क्योंकि अभी मेरे पास एक यूनिवर्सिटी के बच्चे आए थे और उन्होंने कहा कि सर हमें गांव में सर्वे करना है तो आप हमें सपोर्ट करिए. तो मैं उनको एक गांव में लेके गया, बहुत बड़ी यूनिवर्सिटी के बच्चे थे. सो 1 घंटे में वो पूरे गांव में घूम के आए और 1 घंटे बाद उन्होंने मुझे बोला कि सर आप तो बोल रहे थे कि गांव वाले बड़े सपोर्ट करेंगे, आपको अप्रिशिएट करेंगे, बट वो तो गाली दे रहे हैं. तो मैंने कहा यार ऐसे होता तो नहीं है हमारे गांव में, बट ये है कि आप मुझे बताइए आपने सर्वे में पूछा क्या है. अब वो पूछ क्या रहे हैं, मान लो गाँव का 80 साल का 70 साल का बुजुर्ग आदमी एक चारपाई पे बैठा है, उससे जाके पूछ रहे बाबा ये कार्बन फुटप्रिंट से क्या समझते हैं आप, है ना, क्लाइमेट चेंज को कैसे सॉल्व करेंगे आप, बिकॉज उनको
Very interesting,
है ना,
actually. That's
उनको
the-
समझाया ही वो गया है, उनको क्लास में पढ़ाया ही वो गया है, उनको सिर्फ क्लाइमेट चेंज, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग और कार्बन फुटप्रिंट्स, कार्बन ऑफसेट एंड एसडीजी गोल्स, है ना, ये सिर्फ वो, और इसका एग्जाम लिया जाए तो दे विल गेट 100 आउट ऑफ द 100, बट इसका ये पूछ लिया जाए कि ग्राउंड पे इसका करना क्या है ना, तो नथिंग, नो वन नोज कि इसका होना क्या है सच में। तो हमारा काम है कि हम सच में ग्राउंड पे जाके उनको बताएं कि मैंने उनको फिर समझा है कि आपको क्लाइमेट चेंज आप पूछेंगे तो कोई नहीं बता पाएगा, बट क्लाइमेट चेंज इज़ नॉट ए सिंगल चीज़ कि ये हो रहा है कि दिस इज़ द क्लाइमेट चेंज, वो बहुत सारी लाखों करोड़ों चीज़ों को मिला के बहुत सारे चेंजेस जब लॉन्ग टर्म में आ रहे हैं, दैट इज़ द क्लाइमेट चेंज, वो आपको समझना पड़ेगा। तो आपको उनसे ये पूछना है कि भाई आपका ग्राउंड वाटर लेवल हर साल कितना नीचे जा रहा है, आपको हर साल पहले ज़्यादा कम गर्मी लगती थी, अब ज़्यादा गर्मी लग रही है जून के महीने में, उसका रीज़न क्या है, पहले ये वाली फसल हो जाती थी खेत में, अब क्यों नहीं हो रही है, ये है।
मैं आपसे ये पूछने वाली थी कि किसी को अगर एक सेंटेंस में आपको या कोई फैक्ट देकर बताना हो कि ये है क्राइसिस और ये अर्जेंसी है जो आप कह रहे हैं कि ग्राउंड वाटर, टेम्परेचर चेंज, ये सब
वही हाँ, इसीलिए कह रहा हूँ उसके लिए एक वर्ड बना ही नहीं है ना। ये देखिए होता क्या है, ऊपर लेवल पे टर्म्स तो आते जाते रहेंगे, है ना, और वो नई मार्केट क्रिएट करने के लिए लाए जाते हैं वर्ड। पहले क्योंकि आज से मैं 8-10 साल पहले जब मैंने अपना करियर शुरू किया था तो एक ओजोन लेयर था, है ना, वो हर जगह वही पढ़ाया जा रहा था, हर इवेंट में वही बोला जा रहा था, फिर लेकिन अचानक से वो ओजोन लेयर गायब हो गई मार्केट से, वो या तो किसी ने सिल दी सुई से या कुछ हो गया उसका, बट वो उसके बाद में उसका कोई चर्चा नहीं हुआ। उसके बाद में एसडीजी गोल्स आए, फिर क्लाइमेट चेंज आया, फिर ये आया, तो ये तो हर साल नए आते जाते रहेंगे, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम ग्राउंड पे क्या है हमें वो उनसे जाके समझनी पड़ेगी। और एक गांव लेवल पे या जैसे अभी क्या है आप देखेंगे, स्कूल लेवल पे अगर मैं बात करूं आपको, स्कूल लेवल पे हम उनको कैसे इस तरह से हम समझाते हैं कि आज से 4 साल पहले 5 साल पहले मुझे याद है शायद 1 या 2 दिन की छुट्टी पड़ी थी एयर पॉल्यूशन से पहली बार इंडिया में, सर्दियों के दिन, तो पूरी इंडिया में वो न्यूज़ का विषय बन गया था, है ना, कि पहली बार इंडिया में एयर पॉल्यूशन से स्कूल को 2 दिन के लिए बंद करना पड़ा। लेकिन अगली साल वो 4 दिन के लिए हुए, फिर 8 दिन के लिए हुए, फिर 16 दिन के हुए, है ना। अभी तो ऐसा लग रहा है कि पूरे महीने ही उनको बंद करके रखो, आधे ऑफिस जो है 50% पे चल रहे हैं, तो क्या फ्रीक्वेंसी बढ़ती चली जा रही है। और कोई भी चेंजेस को जो इस चीज़ को झुटलाते हैं या ऊपर लेवल पे बैठ के बोल देते हैं कि कुछ नहीं है सब बकवास बात है, तो वो तो लाइव देख सकते हैं आके, है ना, वो तो पिछले 5 साल में लाइव चेंज देख सकते हैं। उसी तरह आप देखिए गुड़गांव देखिए या बेंगलोर देखिए, चेन्नई देखिए, आप थोड़ी सी अगर जिस गांव में जिस बारिश से गांव के खेत गीले नहीं होते उतने में तो बाढ़ आ जा रही है ना, पूरा जो अंडर पास है वो पूरा भर जा रहे हैं। सो दिस इज़ द चेंज दे कैन सी द लाइव। सो हमें उस लेवल पे जाके उनको समझाना है, सो दे कैन अंडरस्टैंड द वैल्यू ऑफ और जहाँ तक हम और देखिए कोई भी चीज़ बुरी नहीं है ना, जहाँ तक अगर मैं, लेकिन उसको यूज कितना करना है, कहाँ करना है, वो हमें देखना है। अगर अभी बाढ़ आ जाए, मेरे शहर में आ जाए, गाँव में आ जाए, तो बाढ़ आ जाएगी तो मैं सबसे पहले जाके छत पे बैठूंगा, है ना, और छत पे बैठ के अगर 2 दिन तक कोई नहीं आया तो मैं 2 दिन बाद हेलीकॉप्टर का वेट करूंगा जो प्लास्टिक की बोतल पानी गिराएगी मेरे ऊपर, है ना, उसी प्लास्टिक की बोतल का मैं वेट करूंगा। तो हर चीज़ का इनोवेशन किसी ना किसी पर्पज़ के लिए हुआ है, लेकिन कितना करना है वो उनको समझाना है हमें।
ये जैसे आपने बोला कि लोगों को समझाना कि कितना urgent है ये crisis. In fact, we've also been getting in questions from our viewers who, of course, understand that there is so much conversation out there, but what can really happen to make some change possible? And I want some streaks of optimism to also stand out because hopefully we can collectively, find a way out because there is no option. One of the questions that we actually got from our viewers was to do with the ethical challenges. We've, of course, discussed the challenges, but the ethical concerns, one of the viewers has asked, when it comes to this strive towards sustainability, if you would like to take that, Bharti. And like Ramveerji also said, the conversations versus the numbers on paper, and then what happens on the ground.
So I don't know what the viewer's question was precisely about ethical
About the ethical challenges. That's they're basically talking about when it comes to the issues that, for example, the brands and the organizations, we touched upon some of that. But why is it so difficult for these so-called notions to actually be overcome when it comes to the ethics of the crisis and what can be done?
I mean, I don't know if I can call it ethics, because the question is whose ethics, right?
It's about the
but I
collective
would
action,
really
yes.
say that I think there's something around how you run your business. Whether your business is Uber, around women's safety, which is zero, of course, because Uber doesn't care about women's safety at all. They don't respond to assault. But secondly, whether it is about brands, because brands don't care about people's safety, because we are ingesting it. Our human lungs and human breast milk has been found to contain plastics. So, what can be worse? So I think there's the ethical notion of when do you say I've made enough money, and let me not be in a hurry to make so much money, compromising the quality of this planet and dignity and safety of people. And I think the number one thing that we want from every product, whether it is, whether it is a shampoo, or whether it is your shoes, or whether it is, the road, you want safety. In fact, that's what we say, the ancient governments only existed because they were trying to give safety historically. That's the number one job of a government. That's why, we particularly honor our armed forces, because they keep our borders and our safety intact. But on the other hand, brands are not expected to do it, but brands are supposed to keep us safe by not poisoning our waters. And I think that is a huge that's a huge imperative, and that is what ethics is about. And I'm afraid they never had the ethics to begin with, because otherwise we wouldn't have had a plastic problem. But jo laws aaye isko control karne ke liye, those laws also seem to have not had the impact, because it is like the government has to behave like a thanedar, going after them, kariye, uthaiye ye plastic. Where is the companies, or the many companies, small and big, their own imperative, ki it is our ethical duty not to let, my chips packets, microplastics lie in a pond. I'm a bird watcher. I go all over this country to the most remote parts, to the Burma-India border. Wahan bhi there's only one thing that spoils the landscape, और वो एक chips का packet होगा. So if you think it doesn't matter, कि in the most beautiful forest there is your packet, और आप नहीं उठाएंगे क्योंकि expensive है, inconvenient है, ना ही आप invest कर रहे हैं. कितने साल हो गए अब? 10 साल से we've been doing EPR. You are not investing in pulling up some new material, some other form of retail. Then I'm sorry to say that you have a business without any ethics. It is not good enough to fund NGOs. कि बॉस आपको पैसे दे दिए, आप ये project करो. भाई, projects and NGOs have a huge limitation. It is business itself which should change. And if this policy doesn't change, doesn't make them change, and all the time the government has to push them and punish them and shout at them and monitor them on a portal, then it's a really sad state of things.
It's our ethical responsibility.
No, it's
as
not
well
ours, it's the brand.
It's also the fact that, like you said, the chips packet, for example, it should also be a collective responsibility to realize that this is what's harming me and demand accountability, right? Because it's about the power of the people as well.
But if you are a woman laborer or in a blue-collar job with 2 children, and you sit in that, in that bus and go all the way to work, 1.5 hours away, then I'm afraid you will need these products of convenience. And when you use these products of convenience, because that's what you can afford. I mean, it's not about us in this room. I mean, we're a very, very elite minority. We the average person, look at the price points. And so we really have to have a combination of a sin tax against plastics combined with much more investment into alternatives. And I don't see any ethics in the chips packets that and other many kinds of plastics. It's not good enough कि waste picker उठा रहा है. That's not good enough. Incidentally, we did a study.
Also, yes.
40 to 60% of a waste picker's income comes from plastics. And now we're finding companies are saying कि चलो waste pickers को social security देते हैं क्योंकि they pick up our plastics. Firstly, they don't pick up your useless plastics. They pick up जैसे कि they pick up the high value plastics. Secondly, when they used to pick up your low value plastics, जब EPR शुरू में शुरू हुआ था, there was a little bit of market. Now even the law leaves out the waste pickers. Thirdly, let's find a just transition. इनको आप plastics कम करो, rag picker या waste picker के नाम पे तो plastic ना चलाते रहो. There are several other professions that we can phase them into, whether it's composting or reduction or whatever. I don't, so I really believe
because
that
you've obviously been so closely involved
and these
with dealing with
tiny projects, you know, I've made my colony plastic free or whatever it is, or my school, or my, office, or my house. These are very important, but these are still a tapasya. This is a way, जो हम बोलते हैं ना कि रियाज कर रहे हैं गाने के पहले. These are all riyaz, but the real thing is to reduce plastics.
I get it, and because
Yeah.
you've been so closely involved with the issue of waste segregation and also working with the informal waste pickers as well, the starting point, of course, has been beyond that, like you just said, because, it's a... And what we are trying to also do is raise awareness, because conversations like these are very important, but like we keep coming back to how it's beyond just the individual level.
Yeah,
And it's, of
because
course...
look at Surat. It's such outstanding work across the city. Many people in many households in Delhi are doing segregation. You can look at it across many parts of Coimbatore, Odisha, cities there. It's not that it's not happening at all, but we are still seeing that plastic pollution. That is the question पूछने का ये है, why is this continuing despite all the efforts? And the result is you need a systemic shift. That is why I encourage everyone कि don't be so passive. Passive means doing something in your house, your school, your college. That is practice. सीखो कि what it means to have a sacrifice. Sacrifice the convenience. Learn how to sacrifice it, but don't stop there. Take it to the next level. Have a good fight. Maybe you'll lose, maybe you'll win. But how can you not take it to a larger level? तब तक कोई change नहीं आने वाला है.
Because that fight is for ourselves and for our future generations, and to save the world that we live in. There is no option but to do that. Vimletu, we're talking about systemic shifts, and we're just about close to wrapping this up. But I want to understand from you if there is one thing that we take away today when it comes to sitting up and just taking notice that this is how urgent this crisis is, and how time is running out. If there's something that you would want to, put out there in terms of your experience. And also, I know there's a sense of frustration that comes in as well, because these are conversations that need to also result in change on the ground.
So, I'm a firm believer of this concept called there cannot be private solution to public problems. Right? You can't treat, when you need surgery, you can't be chewing paracetamol. So it's a grave situation. And therefore, we all will have to do something about it. And when we say we, it's our governments. Largely, if the government starts only enforcing the laws that it's made for the country with regard to, be it municipal waste rules or EPR or with regard to plastic, maybe 50 to 60% of the problem will be gone. Problem of waste management is not burning the waste. Waste to energy is the other big issue that we all are getting into, and educated people are actually signing up for it or giving a great go ahead, because a lot of places are now building incinerators. You all need to go and read about this, because there will be a fancy one-page ad telling you that Delhi's waste has disappeared. 10,000 metric tons every day that we're talking about. Why? Or maybe perhaps more, because now we have these fancy waste-to-energy plants. And why not just in Delhi, everywhere? And what is waste-to-energy plant? It's basically incinerating waste at high temperature, burning waste at high temperature, making them into fumes and toxic gases that you inhale, and then you die. You die a little early, your medical bill increases a little bit. Till 3 years ago, every third child had asthma in Delhi. Now a report that came this year said, no, every second one has it. Those numbers should scare us and beware us and make us formulate some kind of a policy and action. I think, we have something called Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Boards. Largely, the responsibility of governance is not of the courts. It's of the government bodies, the central government, the state government. They need to start, and there's 50% vacancy, by the way, in our pollution control boards. The only institution that is supposed to be keeping a check on countries' pollution or emission, or on whether individual or institutions are following laws, are these pollution control boards, and they don't have people, they don't have money, they don't have machines. So, a lot of times we ask, right, that how come other countries are doing well? They also became 5 trillion and 20 trillion economies because they actually worked in strengthening checks and balances. ये पागल की तरह हम दौड़ेंगे अगर इकोनॉमी की तरफ, तो आगे तो इकोनॉमी देखेगा और पीछे हमें खांसते हुए बच्चे दिखेंगे. अब आपको चूज करना है कि आपको वहां पढ़ना है या फिर एक बीमार देश चाहिए आपको कि हर तीसरे बच्चे का लंग जो है वो छोटा है. That's the priority that we need to ask, and I'm so glad that you ask that question every night on your channel. And there are many people who are actually asking that in media, and there are many children who are asking those questions on the street, that why is my lung stunted? Who is accountable? Is my mother or my mother's womb or my father's sperm or this government's air? Who is making my lung so stunted? And it's not as if it's stunted by 10% now, and the next year it will be stunted by 30%, and sab changa si. And that's where we all have normalized it, is where we need to understand. Plastic तो क्या है कि बहुत सुंदर है ना, आजकल प्लास्टिक देखने में भी इतना खूबसूरत होता है. कभी-कभी अच्छी-अच्छी चीजें प्लास्टिक में आती हैं. मतलब जैसे भारती ने बोला, बिलबोर्ड्स कितने अच्छे लगते हैं, और आपको पता है वो मतलब सबसे ज्यादा कैंसर फॉर्म अगर होता है तो वो फैंसी बिलबोर्ड से ही होता है. ये जो सारे पीवीसी के बिलबोर्ड्स होते हैं.
Hopefully now people will understand that we are ingesting plastic as well.
मेरा कहना ये है कि knowledge से क्या होगा? Unless and until knowledge doesn't translate into policy and into action, that knowledge is of no use. We all know difference between good and bad. Plastic and no plastic, crackers and no crackers, good air, bad air. What did we do when our water got bad? We all bought water purifiers. What are the rich doing when their air has got bad? We all are buying air purifiers. What will happen when plastic will start causing, your river bodies are choked? 80 to 90% of India's river bodies and water bodies are completely choked. By the way, we sit in the capital of India, where the river is the worst river that you can have on this planet. The water quality of Yamuna is E class, as per the government's own admission, which basically means that it's only fit for animal bathing. Sorry, it's not even fit for animal bathing. It's only fit for industrial cooling. मशीनों को ठंडा करने लायक पानी है हमारी राजधानी की नदी का. भैंस भी नहीं नहा सकती उसमें, और वो पानी हम वैसे पीते हैं. हाँ, हम तो कुछ और पीते हैं.
प्लास्टिक भी इंजेस्ट कर रहे हैं, जैसे हमने बात करी.
हम आरओ का पानी पीते होंगे, बाकी चीजें. तो आई थिंक वो सवाल पूछना, और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे बहुत सारे अच्छी पॉलिटिकल विल अगर है सरकार में, अगर हम चांद पे जा सकते हैं, तो चांद पे थोड़ा सा 1-2 दिन लेट पहुंच जाएंगे तो कुछ नहीं होगा. मतलब थोड़ा अपना प्लास्टिक को, फ्लाईओवर थोड़ी छोटी हो जाए तो क्या हो जाएगा. मतलब ये 10 मिनट का ऑब्सेशन ऑफ ब्लिंकिट, और ऐसे जैसे कि सब कुछ बारिश में आपका खराब ही हो जाएगा. सैंडविच में भी आपको, भिंडी भी आपको प्लास्टिक में चाहिए. सो ऑल ऑफ दोज, एंड आई थिंक बिहेवियर से नहीं पता चलेगा, Behavior का problem नहीं है, institutional systemic है, and the government and institutions and corporates. I think profit making, accountability that corporations have outside in other parts. In Europe, they can't get away by causing, there'll be a class action against a corporation because of who? If there are instances of cancer or water contamination. If we know that 30% of plastic found in our brother's lake is from a particular chips brand that starts with the letter L, then that company P that owns that letter L will be sued. It's as simple as that. If most of the bottles that you find in Meethi River in Bombay is of a brand K, which is a water-making brand, then that parent company called C that owns that brand K will have to shut down. You can't choke my water body just because you want to be the richest corporation on this planet. And I'll ask you that questions. As in, you can't have these fancy 200 crore. So most of these people who go to fancy universities and study what? I went to a very good college. Bharti also went to a great college. And then people end up going to IIM and more IIMs and everything else. And then your salary package. To sell poison to our children, these management trainees get 10 crore rupees. The company C and company P and company L, company T, they hire these fancy people from India who actually sell us microplastic, and we celebrate it and we make that aspirational. Those are the fundamental questions that we need to ask of our companies and the government and of individuals and of ourselves. I'm no Gandhi here when I'm giving you all this bhashan. The 20 bad things that I do. I don't have 100%, zero footprint lifestyle. I'm sure there'll be 20 kilos of plastic on my. I'm not wearing 20 kilos, but 200 grams to plastic मेरे ऊपर भी होगा. और मैं भी पूरा credit card तो नहीं खाता हूँगा. शायद एक चौथाई debit card, credit card तो है नहीं मेरे पास. Debit card तो खाता ही होऊंगा मैं. थोड़ा सा आधा बहुत.
Yeah, but I get that, when we talk about shifting the needle, there is also the realization that it's gone beyond just raising awareness, of course. It's the time to take action, and which is exactly the kind of message that we are putting out here time and again. No action, not an option. Ramveer ji, आपसे closing remarks लेना चाहूँगी. एक thought जो आप share करना चाहेंगे, the message that you want to put out through this platform to those who are watching, and something that you would want the world to be reminded about.
देखिए, बिल्कुल, जहाँ तक अभी एथिक्स की बात हो रही थी, मैं उससे शुरू करूँगा, क्योंकि एथिक्स मुझे लगता है आप किसी भी प्रोडक्ट के ऊपर पढ़ के देखिए, उसमें 3-4 नाम लिखे रहते हैं हमेशा, है ना. प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय, मैन्युफैक्चर्ड बाय दिस, मार्केटेड बाय दिस एंड कंज्यूम्ड बाय अस, है ना. तो उस तरह से उस पर लास्ट वाला नहीं लिखा होगा. तो ये है कि मतलब शुरू से लेके एंड तक सभी की कहीं ना कहीं वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. और बचा सिटीजन्स की, तो वो मतलब हम उन पे भी नहीं टाल सकते, हम हमेशा दूसरे की गलती नहीं निकाल सकते. हम सबकी भी जिम्मेदारी, लेकिन हम सबको कहीं ना कहीं एक अवेयरनेस की भी ज़रूरत है. और अवेयरनेस के साथ साथ हमें एक ऑप्शंस की भी ज़रूरत है, क्योंकि जब आप मार्केट में देखिए, हमेशा जो चीज़ सस्ती होगी वही कोई भी जो सड़क पे चलता हुआ आदमी है, जो मार्केट में आदमी घूम रहा है, वो वही उठाएगा. तो अब वो सरकार की जिम्मेदारी है कि आप किस चीज़ को सस्ता कर रहे हैं, किस चीज़ को महंगा कर रहे हैं. आप अभी मार्केट में जाइए, प्लास्टिक वाले से या फिर सब्जी खरीदिए, फल खरीदिए, कुछ भी खरीदिए, आप उससे बोलिए कि भैया ये पन्नी मत दो, पॉलीथीन मत दो, कोई आपके पास ये कागज़ का, पेपर का या कपड़े का हो तो वो दे दो. वो तुरंत बोलेगा कि इसके 5 रुपये अलग से लगेंगे, है ना. तो फिर मैं पीछे हट जाऊँगा, मैं बोलूँगा नहीं ठीक है, पन्नी में ही दे दो, ठीक है. तो वो तो हमारे हाथ में है कि हमें किस तरफ मार्केट को घुमाना है. तो इसीलिए सब कुछ, ये सारी चीज़ें इकोनॉमी से जोड़ते हुए वो सरकार को भी और हमें भी सब चीज़ को है. दूसरी चीज़ जो आप कह रही थी कि सबसे पहले मुझे ज़रूरत है कि हम सबको सच्चाई कबूलनी चाहिए. हमको चीज़ों को ढकने की बजाय, आंकड़ों को ढकने की बजाय, और जो AQI मॉनिटर्स को धोने की बजाय, हमको ज़रूरत है कि जो भी सच में है, अगर प्रॉब्लम है तो है ना, उसको, क्योंकि देखो जब प्रॉब्लम हम सच में लोगों तक पहुंचाएंगे, हम बच्चों तक पहुंचाएंगे, जब सीनियर सिटीजन्स तक पहुंचाएंगे, तभी उसका सॉल्यूशन भी लोग देंगे। अगर हम उसको झुठलाते रहेंगे, नहीं नहीं सब कुछ ठीक है, नहीं नहीं कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, तो हमेशा लोग दो हिस्सों में बटे रहेंगे। और आज की विडंबना यही है, हम चाहे जितने भी लोग यहाँ पे बैठे हैं, मुश्किल से मुश्किल, मुझे नहीं लगता, मैं गारंटी के साथ कहता हूँ 10% लोग भी ऐसे नहीं होंगे जो न्यूट्रल होंगे, या तो इस पक्ष के लोग होंगे या उस पक्ष के लोग होंगे, है ना। और जब तक हम न्यूट्रल रह के चीज़ों को नहीं देखेंगे, हाँ अगर ये गलत है, चाहे मैं इस पक्ष का हूँ लेकिन गलत कर रहा है तो गलत है, अगर मैं विपक्ष का भी हूँ अगर गलत सही कर रहे हैं तो सही है। तो हमें सबसे पहले जो आप कह रहे हैं क्या होना चाहिए, हमें सबसे पहले सारी चीज़ों को एज ए न्यूट्रल होकर देखना पड़ेगा, इन सब चीज़ से हट के, तो हम साथ सही सलाह सही लोगों तक देख पाएंगे। मैं जैसे हम स्कूल्स को अपना कैंपेन का पार्ट बनाते हैं, तो बच्चे हमेशा यही पूछते हैं कि सर हम क्या कर सकते हैं, है ना, हम हाउ आई कैन बी पॉन्ड मैन। सो क्योंकि हमारा यही मोटिव है कि हम एक पॉन्ड मैन कुछ नहीं कर सकता, हमें लाखों करोड़ों पॉन्ड मैन क्रिएट करने पड़ेंगे। दिस इज
पॉन्ड मैन एंड पॉन्ड वुमन,
दिस इज नॉट जेंडर वर्ड, सो दिस इज जस्ट वी कैन कॉल पॉन्ड वॉरियर, है ना। सो हमें वो लाखों पॉन्ड मैन क्रिएट करने पड़ेंगे जिससे कि लाखों पॉन्ड भी साफ हो सके। तो हम वो ये पूछते हैं कि सर हम कैसे कर सकते हैं, तो हमें उनसे ये तो नहीं बोल सकता मैं कि जाओ जाके पॉन्ड साफ करो, है ना। मैं ये बोलता हूँ कि देखिए दो तरीके हैं, एक आप जाके आसपास के पॉन्ड को जाके साफ करें, प्लास्टिक निकालें, ठीक है। दूसरा तरीका ये है कि जो प्लास्टिक वहाँ पे है वो भी हमने ही भेजा है वहाँ पे, है ना। तो नॉर्मली मैं क्या देखता हूँ, 1 स्क्वायर मीटर में 4 से 5 किलो प्लास्टिक निकल जाता है ना, पॉन्ड में साल भर में। तो अगर आप साल भर में 5 किलो प्लास्टिक अपने जो चिप्स कुरकुरे या जो भी आप टॉफ़ी खा रहे हैं, अगर आप 5 किलो प्लास्टिक इकट्ठा कर लेते हैं तो दैट मीन्स यू हैव क्लीन 1 स्क्वायर मीटर पॉन्ड एंड यू डेफिनेटली यू बिकम द पॉन्ड मैन।
मतलब ये है 2000 गार्बेज ट्रक इक्विवेलेंट प्लास्टिक जाता है समुद्रों में।
यस, तो आप प्लास्टिक को जाने से रोक लें या फिर जाने के बाद साफ कर लें, बात एक ही है। इवन जाने से रोकने वाले ज़्यादा बेटर लोग हैं, है ना। तो दिस इज़ द वे, और हम उनको फिर सर्टिफिकेट देते हैं, जिसने भी हमें 5 किलो प्लास्टिक इकट्ठा करके दे दिया उसको हम सर्टिफिकेट देते हैं, नाउ यू आर द पॉन्ड वॉरियर। और हमें अभी तक लगभग सैकड़ों बच्चे अभी तक हमसे सर्टिफिकेट ले चुके हैं। सो दिस इज द
पावर ऑफ द यूथ ऑफ कोर्स।
हाँ, सो दिस इज द वे कि हमें उनको किसी ना किसी रूप में उनको हमें अप्रिशिएट करना पड़ेगा, प्रेज करना पड़ेगा। जो लोग, जो मैं आपको शुरू से कह रहा कि सोशल सस्टेनेबिलिटी हमें पहले लोगों को देनी पड़ेगी। जो लोग इस रास्ते आ रहे हैं या जो लोग चीज़ सस्टेनेबिलिटी का रास्ता अपना रहे हैं, उनको कैसे हम प्रेज कर सकते हैं, जैसे कैसे उनको समाज में हम एक अलग इज्जत दे सकते हैं, तभी वो आएंगे। क्योंकि समाज अपने आप किसी डायरेक्शन में नहीं जाता, समाज को किसी डायरेक्शन में मोड़ने के लिए पहले उसी समाज से कुछ लोग उठाए जाते हैं, उनको एक नया तबका या पद्मश्री या पद्म भूषण दिए जाते हैं, फिर उनको बोला जाता है कि अब समाज को इस तरफ मोड़ो आप। फिर वो चिप्स के कुरकुरे लेके टीवी पे खड़े होते हैं, तो समाज अपने आप उस तरफ मुड़ जाता है। तो इसलिए हमें समाज को एक डायरेक्शन में मोड़ने के लिए उनको कुछ एप्रिसिएशन, टोकन ऑफ एप्रिसिएशन देना पड़ेगा, अपने आप ही मुड़ने लगेंगे वो।
ये जो आपने टर्म यूज़ करी पॉन्ड वॉरियर्स, hoping that that's just a part of the many ways in which we can move the conversation forward and hopefully arrive at a stage where we are going beyond just having conversations and talking about the real need for action and actually see that action around us. I would like to end on that optimistic note. I get that there are several layers to this mammoth challenge that we are dealing with. Hopefully, there is a sense of responsibility and urgency that also comes in. Like we've been saying, no action, not an option. I want to thank each one of you for sharing your thoughts and your perspectives. Thank you for those who've been also sending in their questions. I could only take one of them, but appreciate you taking out the time. Thank you very much. Thank you.